I got a new toy. This should be the 5 kilowatt motor, and I've already got the 5 kilowatt motor's controller. Oh, I need to clean up this area so badly. Documentation. Anyone else who bought these, does that keep reminding you of the Starship Enterprise? I mean, I know you're nerds, so don't pretend you're not. Water cooling. It has a different size shaft and a different size keyway, so I have to keep these separate. I've been doing more thinking on the pulleys, but that's for a later video. This should be a fair bit lighter than the 10 kilowatt. Being that the 10 kilowatt is really just two 5 kilowatts stacked together, I warn you, my floors are messy. Sorry. I am going to, off camera, disconnect all of this, clean all this area up, and I'll figure out, well, I'll bring you back. I'm going to figure out how to mount these. You know what? I went crazy with the strapping and I don't think I needed it. So I think I'm going to pull this strapping off. I do like the idea of wedging this in still. I'll probably do something similar for that. That's going to be largely woodworking, so I will do that off camera. I will bring you back when I start wiring everything up. But for now, let's look at size comparisons. This is the contactor for the motor and the controller. You can see it is a fair bit smaller. Maybe if I do that, there we go. We'll know together at the same time, but I believe I have enough wires and ring terminals to redo the wires coming from, well, the batteries will feed into new bus bars, which there's one of them there. The other one's here somewhere. The batteries will feed into the bus bars, and then they'll go for the 5 kilowatt and for the 10 kilowatt from the bus bar to the contactor on the positive side, contactor to the controller for the both of them. The negative will just go straight to the bus bar. Yeah, anyways, back to size comparisons. Now, keep in mind, the bigger controller in the back has the water block, and the water block is that space under here. Yeah, it's smaller and shorter, but not by a lot. There we go. So, like I said, the shafts are different, the keys are different, the diameter is the same. I didn't realize at first, but this, the 10 kilowatt has two Hall effect sensors, one on top of the other. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense for one motor. But apparently the rotor that goes inside of this, the coil that connects to the rotor, they literally just have two of them stacked on top of each other going to a common shaft, which is why everything is doubled coming out of the 10 kilowatt. I don't know if I'm going to do it in this video or I might do it in a dedicated video, but even though I am not going to parallel these motors, why don't I set the camera up properly? Kelly got back to me and told me how to wire up the two controllers over the CANBus so that they maintain the same RPM. I told them about how I wanted to parallel them. I told them that before I changed my mind. I just realized these these ring terminals might be too small for that. Sorry, my brain's going all over the place. I've had a very chaotic recent period of time. Back on topic. I told Kelly back when I was still thinking of running the two motors in parallel for extra power that I needed to be able to match the RPM because I wanted to use one belt for both of them. And they said I could do that over the CANBus, but they warned me that because these are different powers, as I accelerated, one motor would lag behind the other. Now, if they're both together on a timing belt, I think it's called, the type of belt with the ribs in it so that it can't slip, that should be okay. It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to do it, but I'd like to test it, because I don't know if there's any videos out there showing how that's done. So it'd be fun to figure it out, but that's probably not going to happen in this video. Yeah, so for me, I get some work in front of me. For you, this somehow reminds me of a 1980s Japanese mecha. Let's see if I can get these two spinning together off of the one helm. So obviously the current setup that I had before has to come apart. So I took the straps off of here. Obviously, I was much more afraid than I needed to be about the torque of this thing. I mean, it has torque, but it's not really going to run anywhere. How about I just get to it and you can watch. Also, I got the new backing clip from BK Precision. It used to sort of like snap into full size or full whatever, and it doesn't do that anymore. I'm guessing they realized that's where it was breaking. Come here, kitty. All YouTube can see is your tail. I got a couple proper bus bars. These are 250 amp rated, which is just a touch under the theoretical max I could pull on the 10 kilowatt motor if I went full bore. I don't plan to ever do that, at least not for any period of time. I don't think the cooling system would handle it. But when I go to put this on the boat, I'm going to have to make a decision. I may end up having to run the leads from the motors directly to those two massive bus bars that I've got downstairs that have all of the batteries going into it. I'll figure that out later. I mean, keep in mind too, the 250 amps is not even beginning to factor the safety margin. So the 260, this thing might theoretically pull. I think we're fine, at least for this stage of the build. So when I spun this up the first time, I had brought everything to these little fuse posts, which obviously is far from ideal. Also, these wires here are 4 gauge, which is not big enough for ABYC standards for the 10 kilowatt. From the bus bar to here, and then from here to the controller is going to be 2/0, which is what I understand ABYC to require. And I've got 2 gauge for the 5 kilowatt controller. The 5 kilowatt motor has a tested maximum of 8,367 watts. Why they call it a 5 kilowatt motor when it can put out 6 kilowatts of power, I don't know, but they do. The 10 kilowatt has a max of 13,282. There. I am constantly referencing these. This is going to be a lot easier. So, knowing that, at a nominal voltage of 51.2, that is 8,367 divided by 51.2 is a theoretical max of, let's say, 164 amps. And the 10 kilowatt, 13282, is 259 amps, say 260 amps. That's why the 250 I think is okay. It's only 10 amps over and only at absolute full bore, which frankly I wouldn't be able to run for very long anyway. Now, when you're trying to figure out the wire gauge requirement, you have to know more than just the amps. You need to know the length and you need to know the temperature. And more importantly, the temperature of the jacket rating. So this is one of the things that separates good expensive cable from cheap cable. There it is. So you can see this ABYC cable is rated for 105 degrees, 600 volts. We can ignore the volts, that's more for arcing prevention. But 105 degrees Celsius is what all of the anchor wire that I've used is rated for. That means that I'm using this column right here, 105 degrees. And I bought a total of 1 meter, 3 feet of the cable. I was doing it inside the engine space because I couldn't remember, or I didn't know how they defined inside engine space. That's why I went to the 2 gauge, which gives me the 175 amps, and 2/0 gives me 280 amps, 280.5 amps inside an engine space, or 330 outside. So the wire should be more than sufficient for ABYC. Yes, I have cleaning supplies. I actually do clean sometimes. Voltage DC, just to make sure that it's dead. I know you can't see it, but it's saying 0 volts. Bud, you want to say hi, YouTube? Want to say hi, YouTube? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wires off of 1 post. That is definitely not skookum. It's been long enough that I've also completely forgotten how I wired all of this up. I'm going to be relearning all of that, which is probably not a bad thing. Oh, and after last time, I had a lot of people tell me to get a depinning tool for changing the wires, because I'm going to have to change the Hall effect sensor connector on the motor the same way that I did with this one. And last time, if you remember, I fought a lot with a little pin, so hopefully it'll go a lot easier this time, if I can remember where I put my depinning tool thingy. I'm sure it's around here somewhere. Since we lost Mr. Tatters, it's kind of sad. Kepler's been a lot more affectionate. I think he's lonely. So I moved his scratcher beside my chair and he sits there all the time now, which kind of makes me happy and sad at the same time. Anyways, yeah, I'm talking about you, bud. You know what? I'm going to take this apart. UVW. U for yellow, V for green, and W for blue. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to actually help me remember it, but there you go. Oh, the other controller is the same as this one in that it's a 72-volt controller technically, but it does do 48-volt. It actually lists as 48-72, and that will let me do regen. I'm very, very curious about how regen is different on the different motor and the different controller at different speeds. I'm kind of wondering if I'll get a better yield at lower speeds with the smaller motor. So it's not just an efficiency. I mean, if the spec sheets are to be believed, I know for sure that this is going to be more efficient at low speeds. But it might well be, it strikes me as reasonable that the regen will be more efficient at lower speeds with the other motors. I have so many experiments to do. I'm very much looking forward to it. I got insurance. There's a company called Gallagher, Skipper's Plan, I think it is. When I first started looking for insurance, folks were like, oh, talk to Gallagher, Skipper's Plan, you'll have no problem getting insurance from them. At the time, I couldn't get insurance from them, and I believe it was because they had a hard limit that you had to have 3 years of experience. I took my first documented sailing course at Bronte Harbor Yacht Club June 11th of 2021? Yeah, 2021. My current insurance, or my previous insurance, expired on Friday. It is currently June 16th. So I had like 3 or 4 days of overlap between when my previous insurance was going to expire and when Gallagher's Skipper's Plan would accept me, and they did, and I got insurance. I then, because Murphy's like this, another one of the places I applied to came back and offered me insurance, and it was cheaper, but I had already paid for Gallagher's Skipper's Plan. So the insurance saga it's not behind me. I mentioned that I was on the hard and I was refitting everything, so I was completely above board. I also said that I will have to get an updated survey, or I said, listen, I expect I need to get a new survey before I go back in the water to show that all the work is done. So I can now proceed with pulling the engine and starting to build all of the electric stuff. I will get another survey, an ABYC certificate electrician to survey all of the work I'm doing to say for insurance purposes that everything is done to spec. So even though I've got insurance, the desire or the concern about keeping ABYC compliance stays just as high as before. Oh, I just realized the water block is loose. It's not tightened down. Actually, here's something we can figure out together. So when I was talking about choosing this controller, let me get this out of the way. I was saying that I believe I can move the water block from here to here, but that wasn't for sure. So together we're going to find out, does it have the screw mounts? It does. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So in theory, no, they're different size bolts. Okay, well, if I ever decide I need the liquid cooling, I guess I'm going to have to figure out another way to mount this to this, or I'm going to have to get the other water block. Oh well. Now I'm curious why they didn't tighten these down. I noticed that because when I went to lift it, it moved. Also, I'm going to do my best to make sure you don't hear a lot of notifications in the background, but yeah, well, with the family stuff going on, it's pretty much constant. So if you hear dings in the background in this video, that's probably why. Ooh, what about this one? That'll do. Oh, it sounds like there's some tape or something under there, which makes sense. There might be a thermal pad. Why it wasn't tightened down by Kelly? I don't know. But now it's being tightened down by this Kelly instead. Not killing it. I don't know what the torque should be. I mean, it just has to have a thermal transfer, so yeah, it should be fine. One thing I'm going to solve in software later, but it won't be solved right now, is the fact that these motors have to spin in opposite directions, because probably the 10 kilowatt is going to be to the left of the propeller, and I have to figure out which way my propeller spins. I think it is a right hand. I have to look up the, if I look up the transmission and engine that's on the boat currently, I'll be able to use that to figure out which way the propeller is supposed to turn. I believe it's a clockwise rotation when going forward. So if that's the case, you know, I'm not going to figure this out now, but the point is I need to figure out which motor. One of the motors is going to have forward as a clockwise thing and reverse as a anti-clockwise thing. I don't know what those are yet. Or rather, I don't know which one's which yet. English, it's such a skill of mine. The chances of me spinning the motor in this video are very low. I suspect just getting things assembled is probably going to take up the majority of today. Oh, okay. So where this one has the two flying leads, this one has terminals. So I'm going to have to make my own wires to go to the switch. Okay, this needs to be changed out to a single switch. I think I have some spares, because at the time I had like an on-off-on. I should have two on-on or on-off switches now. Okay, so I have this switch. It has two rows, so technically I could drive both contactors from the same switch, but the contactors consume power when they're latched, and that's a waste of power. So I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to turn on the contactor for the motor that's actively in use. I only have one on-off single connector, single row. So I need to get some more of these. I've got two of these which I can use. I mean, they're about the same price. It's just, I'd rather not use something I don't actually need it for before I need it. Oh, and I have to redo this fuse because I put the spring on the wrong side. I need to think for a few minutes, and I'm not sure it's going to make for great YouTube. So I think I'm going to turn off the camera and I'll bring you back when I've made some decisions. All right, it's been a few hours and I am still doing work, but I thought I would bring you back and show you what I've done so far. As I said, I've forgotten everything. I was trying to keep the old wiring in place, but I remember that I made some mistakes, so I figured I would just cut it all back and start over. So this is the old diagram. I'll probably put it up on screen, but this is the part I'm working on right now. So I remember one mistake was I had the fuse before the switch. It wanted it after the switch. I put the spring for the fuse. Where did those wires go? The first time I built this, I put the spring on that side and just sort of like jammed it between the fuse body and the wire, which was obviously a mistake. So that's been fixed. The ring terminals were sized the right size for this. For this, they're way bigger and they don't fit. I have the line that powers the smart shunt. I have the two MPPTs, and I have a jumper to go to the larger bus bar. And this will be where the two controllers come off and where the battery comes on. I gotta change the ends for the batteries, but I'll bring the camera back on for that stuff. And same thing on the ground. I've got the two charge controllers coming in and then a jumper to here. And then I'll have the two grounds going out to the two controllers and the ground for the battery. There's the smaller controller, or the smaller contactor. So it's got the pre-charge resistor. And for whatever reason, the bigger contactor has built-in leads for the coil. This one doesn't. But I wanted to match them up, so, I mean, does it matter? No, but at least they're both white wires in a black shrink tube thingy. It doesn't matter, but it made me happy, so that's how I did it. Okay, I've got to figure out the actual switches, and then I will bring you back and we'll start making all of the battery cables, or the heavy gauge wires, for connecting the motors to the controllers to the bus bars to batteries. Okay, it is much later than I expected, which I suppose I should expect. But providing I haven't screwed up, I've got everything ready. So I'm not going to get much more assembled tonight. Sunday night, and I have to get ready for a conference this week. And I also have to get down and pay my my parking fees for the boat. So I got to get to sleep soon. So let me show you what I've done, and then for you, it's going to be no time, but for me, it might be a few days before I get back to this. But that's okay. I'm not really happy with how these are wired up currently. I'm going to have to rework this or think about this some more. But the idea is you have from the battery through the fuse to the switch. Yes, I forgot to put the shrink tubing on it. To a tap. On one side, that's going to go to the motor controller, which just tells the motor that the contactor is closed. This is the ground, so it comes from the tap into the first leg of the contactor, comes out of the contactor, and goes to ground. Now, this wire, it shouldn't take a lot of current, but it is a very low gauge wire. So this is not what's going to go on the boat, obviously. I mean, I'm using electrical tape and stuff. So That'll close the contactor. You got the pre-charge resistor so that as soon as there's power coming in from the battery, it'll start to allow a small amount of current through to start charging up the capacitors. Like I said, I wanted to make the wires today, but I'm out of time. And then it is exactly the same thing on the smaller contactor. Now, one thing I do want to note, put a picture here. If you notice, they have the fuse on the other side of the switch. So I asked the Brain Trust on the Patreon Discord, is there any reason people can think of why the fuse should be on the far side of the switch? And no, to be fair, I didn't give people a long time to answer because I was in the middle of this and I wanted to keep going. But one answer I got was that it would make it so that I could disconnect the circuit before I changed the fuse. But if that's the case, I can use the main contactor to kill the power if I ever have to change the fuse, in the unlikely chance. So for me, I ran it before the switch so that the switch and everything downstream is protected by the fuse. Feel free to comment if you think there's a different reason for why that should be done that way. I'm going to call it a night. But for you, as is the case lately, it's been a bit longer than I expected before I got back to this. But back to it I am. What I need to do now is wire up the connectors from the battery to the bus bars to the controllers to the motors. Also, by the time this video is edited, I'll know what the story is, but as I sit here in real time, my sister and my father and his partner are at the airport about to fly home. Yeah, I'm going to be a little distracted and anxious in this recording session, but so far so good. And to everyone who helped, I really can't say thank you enough. It's been a hell of a couple of weeks for my family. Right, let's get back to it. Now, I'm torn because on one hand, I want to keep the longest pieces of wire that I've got as long as possible to make them most likely to be useful in the future. And on the other hand, the longer I cut this off, the more likely whatever I put on this side will be useful in the future. So I think I got a natural bend here. I'm going to use that as an arbitrary point to split the difference. Okay, so that'll be useful for something in the future, I am sure. Okay, kind of shot myself in the foot. By cutting at the angle, I don't know if you can see, but now it's got a bit of a curve, which is going to make it fun to strip and shove into here, but that's okay. I can do that. That's not a problem. I need skizzers. It's been a while since I crimped a battery terminal. One thing these don't have that the smaller bus bars had that I really like is a cover. I don't have a 3D printer and I don't really have the time or money or space for one, but at some point I'll have to see if somebody's made a STL file, I think they're called, whatever, a downloadable thingy you can print to make covers for these bus bars. Or I'll just make something out of wood at some point, I don't know, but I would like to cover these bus bars at some point. All right, that's done. The Hot has less play, much less play, because I ran it over here. Well, all right, I think I could get away with leaving that much of a stub to give the chance that this red wire can be used for something else down the road. All right. Bit tighter than I would like, but it works. I should mention that the batteries are coming straight to the big bus bars, and then from the big bus bars they'll go to the controller, which is where all the heavy amperage is going. The repurposed fuse holder that I'm using is kind of like mini bus bars, is really only carrying any power coming in from the solar panels, which isn't a huge amount, and the connector for the smart shunt, which uses milliamps. So these are more than adequate for the small amount of current that'll be going through them. There we go. If this was a install that was going to last for more than a few hours, I would pin these down, but as it is, I'm not too worried. Again, it's only for the solar current. Kind of wishing I had bought, see, it's always easy when the pain of purchasing is behind you to sit there and say, man, I wish I had bought more. But I kind of wish I had bought more. I only bought 1 meter, 3 feet, and that has to go from the bus bar through the contactor and then the contactor to the controller. Question now becomes, do I split it down the middle and give myself equal distance to go from the bus bar to the contactor to the motor? Or should I make one side relatively short and assume the contactor will always live close to the bus bar and put the extra length onto the controller? Or do I assume that the controller is going to be close to the contactor and make the contactor to the bus bar the long one? And I have to choose because they have different ring terminals. So once I make the cables, they'll only work in that particular purpose. Okay, first of all, the grounds are easy because they don't get interrupted. The grounds go straight from the negative bus bar to the controller. It's only the positive that gets interrupted by the contactor. So the first thing I think I should do is plan the ring terminals. This is my 2 gauge, so this has to go from the bus bar to that post on the small Kelly controller. And I have the same for the 4 gauge. 2 gauge and 2-aught. Oh, I am distracted. First, let's do the negative. I'm not going to actually crimp the wires yet, but negative to negative. These are my 2 gauge to 3/8. I must have more than this. Okay, these look a bit big. Where's my other 2 gauge? 2 gauge to 5/16. Okay, that's the right size. That's the right size. Okay, so 2 gauge, 2 gauge. I think I might have screwed something up. I think what I might have done is used the bolt size from the larger controller, assuming it was the same bolt for that one, and it's not. Actually, all of these is what I should have got. I've got 2 bigger ones, which does not make sense, especially because the contactor bolts are fairly small as well. I think if I've screwed this up and I've got 2 that are too big, I'll use the big ones for the controller. Okay, whatever. I'm thinking out loud as I go. Okay, that's the right size for that. Yep, I think I screwed this up. Not a big deal, just a minor deal. But I've got 3/8 and 5/16. I should have got all 5/16. So the 3/8 I'm going to put on the controller. And the contactor will be 2 smalls. Obviously, I'm just loosely putting everything on just to make sure that I've got everything accounted for. Especially when you're trying to work on something and you're very much distracted by something else. Taking a few extra minutes to, like, doing this, taking the time to put these loose ends on, just helps make sure I don't make any screw-ups, because it means, okay, all of the ring terminals are accounted for. I can stop thinking about that for a minute, and then I can focus on just where I'm going to cut the wires. Okay, so that's the 2 gauge. The 2 gauges are completely accounted for. Now I need to sort out the 2-aught. Okay, these are 3/8. So the 3/8 are going to be for the controller. I have 2 small ones that are the right size for the bus bars. Same thing. I should have used these for everything. Well, so be it. A little bit too big is not a big deal. I still have a lot of contact area. Oh, actually, you know what? I know you can't see that because the camera's too far away, but the ring terminals on these are, yeah, these are too small for that. So these have to go onto there. Okay. Oh, wow, those just fit. Contactor ring terminals are much bigger. I bet you that's where I made the mistake. These were for the contactor. You know what? Maybe I want to move these to the contactor here so that if I ever have to substitute, I can swap out the contactors really quickly. Yes, I think that's what I'm going to do. And maybe that's even what I was thinking when I ordered these. I'll put this on and I'll bring you in to show you what I'm talking about. So if you see here, this is the 3/8. It just barely fits onto here. These contactor studs are really big. The smaller contactor the 5/16 just fits, but if I ever wanted to swap this contactor into this place, I couldn't do it if I used the 5/16. If I do the 3/8 here, there's still lots of contact area because the plate is really big, but it means that I could also drop this contactor in if I found this one was getting too hot or something. Key thing is I want to be able to swap out any parts. I want to be able to make sure that everything is interchangeable as best as possible so that if I'm in a pickle, I can take something and move it over to the other motor if that's the motor I want to run for some reason. Okay. So everything is accounted for. I thought I bought spares. I have no spares, so I best not screw up any of this when I'm making the cables. Big contactor for the 10 kilowatt, for the 600 amp controller, the 450 amp controller, to the 5 kilowatt to the small contactor. I have all my ring terminals. I have all my ring terminals now sorted and planned. All right, Dad's flight leaves in 2 hours. By the time you watch this, if you can go back in time and cross your fingers for us, it'd be great. Oh, the stress. Right. As I mentioned, I have to figure out now where to cut this. I'm trying to imagine where these are going to go on the boat. In my head, I don't even know how to sketch this out to describe it to you, but if you've got the prop shaft coming up here, like I'm sitting in the companionway on the sole boards looking towards the engine, you have the transmission and the prop coming up like this. I'll have the two motors back like this, and then I have the bulkhead where I ran the wires and had the Servo GX before. I'm imagining these two controllers up like that, either horizontal or vertical, with the contactors probably fairly close to them. I think it makes sense to consider the contactors, yeah, because I've got these cables that have to go into the harness, so I think it makes the most sense to assume that the contactor is going to be fairly close to the controller. So if I make the cable here about the same length as the data cables, I think that's about reasonable. Cut it about there. That'll leave about 2 feet to go from the bus bar to the contactor, and then the contactor to there. And the other benefit to that is, oh, you know what? I don't need to think about this too much, because the controller end and the bus bar end is the same, and the contactor is the same. So the two cables, I'll be able to flip them around. I could swap those cables around and move this closer to the bus bar if needed. Okay, that makes life a lot easier. Excellent, 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 excellent. Okay, so let's do about 1 foot. Ironically, I can only find my metric tape, which is fine. This is 93 centimeters, so I'll go to 40, which puts it about there, which makes it almost exactly the length of the data cables. Oh gosh. There we go. Ran out of milk. Starting to learn to drink my coffee black. Okay, I was using a 35 millimeter die before. The next size up is 50. So I'm assuming 50 is the right size for the 2 gauge. Yeah, that looks about right. I think this is only the second time I've ever changed the dies out. I had to do that when I did the 4-aught or whatever it was. I had 1-aught for the 12-volt system on the trip home. So I'll do the positive first. So I'm going to go small to big. I go small to small on the ground. I go small to big on the hot. So I'm going to build just the hots first so I don't accidentally crimp the wrong one, especially where I'm really distracted today. Camera's being difficult, but when I say large to small, that's what I mean. Really need to get one of those twirly things for cutting the, you just put it on and spin it like when you're cutting a pipe. But apparently take more forethought than I've got though. Cut it a bit proud again, but that's okay. Better to be too long than too short. Okay, that's not good. Shit. 50's too big. It didn't crush the wire. This was 2 gauge. 2 gauge. So this is the right ring terminal. Okay, well, 50's too big. I guess it's better to go too small. Frustrating. I guess that's what I get for mixing metric and imperial. I really don't like how that's pinching down at all. Oh well, gotta deal with it. Not really in a position to go and buy more tools right now. Okay, this is gripped, but I'll show you what I don't like about it and how I think I'm going to try to fix it. See how it's kind of got that lip on it? That's the air gap between, when I go to crimp it down, it's leaving a bit of a space between the two dies, and the metal's pushing up into that. So what I'm going to do is turn it 45 or 90 degrees and try to squeeze it from the other side now. At the end of the day, so long as it's compressed, it should be okay. I suspect before the boat fully goes into production, I'm going to be replacing these wires, which kind of hurts because these are not cheap. So I'm trying to do this in a way you can see, but I need to be able to see what I'm doing as well. All right, see if I can show you this now. There you go. So you can see how it was lifted up like that. That's now going to be on the flat. And it just turned, okay, whatever. It's still flattening down nicely. Yep, this is going to work. It's going to be a pain in the arse to make, but it is going to work. You can sort of see the lip there. That lip gets pushed into one of the corners of the hex shape. This is annoying but solvable. Okay. It's a little gnarly, but it's nicely compressed. It'll be good. It'll be good. Especially because I can hide my shame with shrink tubing. Big to little. There we go. I need a new pair of glasses. Now in this case, I don't know what alignment's going to work best, so I'm going to put the two flats in the same orientation. I think that should be fine. Hoping to finish these wires before I have to go to the airport. If the video suddenly cuts off, that's what happened. I ran out of time. Well, not that it mattered to you, I'll just have a sudden wardrobe change. I'm doing it basically just enough to grip the wire. You can't see what I'm seeing, but it's pinching the ring terminal, and it's still not actually capturing the wire yet. Wow, this is a pain in the arse. Okay, well, it's still a solvable pain in the arse. I guess I've been spoiled by how close 35mm die was to the 4-gauge wire. If this had been what it was like for the 4-gauge, I would have swapped it out an age ago for something with with Imperial dies. It's definitely on tight now, so that's fine. Looks like the dog's breakfast, but who cares? All right, one wire done. Dog's breakfast, but it's not coming off. I wonder if you could buy dies that'll fit the mandrels. Let my coffee get cold here. I don't know if I'm getting old or cynical or what, but black coffee is really not that bad. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, so if things work out with my dad, in a week's time, less than a week's time, I will be joining Zora. There's a couple of boats, a couple of YouTube channels that were really important to get me to where I am right now. I've spoken about Arabella before. I went there when I was interested in woodworking and had no interest in boats. I met up with Steve and Alex at the time. Around the same time, I started talking to Reese. Reese, I don't know how I came across his channel back in the day, but I remember at one point he was fixing up fiberglass boat. I don't remember what it was now. And he got an opportunity to get a steel hull that had been, previously when it was still a full boat, had caught fire and sank, I think in the 90s. And the previous owner had hauled it up and was rebuilding the hull and then abandoned the project. And Reese had the opportunity to buy the empty hull for a very reasonable number. I don't know if he ever said it publicly, so I won't say it here, but it was a very good deal. Now, to provide some context at the time, he was living out of his Ford Transit Connect, so not exactly somebody who was swimming in money. But after he got Zora, instead of selling the sailboat that he had been fixing up, he gave it to a kid on the condition that the kid finished the refit. And that really impressed me from a generosity perspective. Well, time passes and he got to do, I think he was doing some electrical work on the boat, and I messaged him and said, hey, listen, why don't you consider doing X, Y, Z? Don't remember what it was, doesn't really matter. And we just got to chatting and gotten to be friends. So time passes and I was going to Denmark for something completely unrelated, and I decided I was going to take my nephew with me. We'll visit Denmark and then go to Ireland. I've always wanted to go to Ireland. So I rented a car and we drove all around the island, and one part of that was stopping and meeting up with Reese and spending time on his boat for the weekend. At the time, I still hadn't really thought, at least not consciously, about getting a boat or doing any kind of sailing. It was just a build channel, a DIY channel I followed that happened to be about a boat. So anyways, we're there having a grand time. And one day it's like, hey, let's go for a sail. So we do. And it was on his boat that I had my aha moment that made me realize I wanted a sailboat. Years and pandemic later, he's now sailing up the East Coast, and he's in Halifax right now as I speak. So he's waiting there to cross to St. John's, Newfoundland, where he's going to pick up some experienced crew to do the North Atlantic back to Ireland. And he asked if I wanted to join him for the Halifax to Newfoundland leg. Originally, his fiancée was going to be there as well, but she had to go back to Ireland, so it'll be a two-person crossing. It'll be my first chance to get some real offshore practice, and he has got a fair bit of passage experience already. On top of the sailing he did before Zora, he brought Zora down through the Med, West Africa, across to the Caribbean, and then, did he do the crossing by himself? No, I think he had somebody for the Atlantic crossing. And yeah, he's been sailing it up the East Coast. So it's going to be an opportunity, if things hold, for me to get some my first proper offshore passage with somebody who knows what they're doing. So I'm really looking forward to that. Just going round and I just keep turning it 120 degrees, turn it in thirds, and squeeze it again until all of the high spots are crushed out. This is terrible, but it'll work. So with that said, it's very likely that the next video is going to be a travel video. You know, it's funny. If I cared about analytics, I wouldn't bother doing any of the travel videos at all because they really don't do well. But I had someone ask me once if I ever go back and watch my own videos, and the only ones I can say I ever go back to watch again are the travel videos. So I don't really mind that they don't do well. It's what I enjoy going back and watching. And after how chaotic the last 6 months has been, some time on the water is going to be absolutely amazing. It'll do my sanity well. Okay, how does this look? Oh God. Whatever, works. It's not clean, but it is crimped. Haha, 2 abominations done. These ring terminals just seem too big. It's almost like they're 1 gauge. Amp 2W pound. Huh? It's 2 gauge. I don't know if I'm particularly out of it today or if this is particularly awkward, but I'm really struggling with crimping these. Not all days are smooth. That's okay. It'd help if I actually close the valve. Fuck. Okay, getting frustrated just makes things worse. Calm the hell down, Maddie. One more. I really hope the 4 gauge fits better. I don't want to do this 6 more times. Okay, well, that was absolutely horrible, but that's the other 2 gauge wire done. Now, hopefully the next die fits better. Okay, the next ones are 70s. 50s or 70s? Okay, 50s definitely way too small. Heck, even 70 looks too small. 95. 95 seems right. Let's try. Wow. All right, let's see how this one crimps. It's taking so long, the camera turned off again. So I've got the same problem with this one. The 95 die is completely crunched down and it's not grabbing onto the wire tightly. I have to figure out what the next size down is, which I guess is the 70, which means I'm going to be doing a lot of rounding again. What I'm doing is I'm compressing it down as much as I can with the 95 to get the shape closer. So hopefully when I switch to the 70, it'll it won't be such a mess. I have to hold it because even though it's crimped, I could pull the wire out right now. I'm really scared if the wire falls out, I won't get it back in and I have no spare ring terminals. These things were so expensive. Okay, that feels like it's got a good grip on the wire now. Okay, doing it initially with the 95 and then switching to the 70 might actually not be the worst idea in the world. Yeah, it's not getting the pinching as much. Okay, switching dies is going to be a pain in the arse, but if that's what it takes to get a nice crimp, then so be it. Okay. Alright, that one came out not too bad. I have to use the 2 different dies, but it does work. Now this one here has very little ability to rotate, so it's very important I get these in the same alignment. I've almost killed the battery again. I have a pile of footage that's just going to be deleted when I go to edit this up, so I'm going to turn off the camera and just finish up the cables. I'll bring you back when I'm ready to shrink tube. Coffee isn't done, but the cables finally are. Using the die that was too large to begin the compression, and then using the one that was smaller to complete the compression, it was pain in the butt, but it made much better connectors than trying to use the smaller one from the start. So if I run into that again, that's today's lessons learned. So I'm going to shrink these up, and then my dad, my sister, and my dad's partner are taking off. It's time for me to go to the airport. All right, I said I was going to do that and stop, but I can't be this close and not connect it. So let's connect it, then I'll scoop. So first, yellow is you. Oh, interesting. Yellow is on the right side. Yellow is on the left. Okay, whatever, doesn't matter. Yellow is you. What? The bolt's too big. The connectors that come with the 10 kilowatt are the right size, but the ring terminals that come with this are too small. The joy of using different controller from the motor. What gauge is this? 16 millimeter square. I don't know if a 4 gauge will fit on that. When you're already stressed out, little things feel like big things. This is not a big issue. Worst comes to worst, I have to order some ring terminals and I deal with this later. All right. That's going to put that right across the DC positive, which I don't want to do. What gauge is this wire? 16 millimeter squared. What is 16 millimeter squared in AUG? 6 gauge. So this is a 6 gauge. I have to order the ring terminals, which means I don't spin this until I get back. Let's see how much I can still get set up. That gets it clear of the positive cable. Is that actually... I'm going to check something here in a second. What is that? Where did this white goo come from? There's a bunch of white goo stuff coming off. Okay, well, surprise chemicals. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing. What I was starting to say is I notice, usually with this type of fuse, in the window you can see through and see where the filament that burns out is, and it's solid. I'm going to take the fuse off here once I finish getting this up and see what the story is. So normally on a fuse you'd see a wiggly thingy-majig. Yeah. I don't see a wiggly. Maybe it just cuts in like this, and this piece here was narrower, but it kind of looks like it's just a straight bar of metal. It's riveted, so I can't crack it open. CNL 400A, so it's a 400 amp fuse. Okay, well, whatever. I have other fuses elsewhere to pop. The power coming out of the battery would pop long before this would pop. If I was using one battery, of course, in the real world I have multiple parallel batteries, so the amperage will be divided across the cells. Actually, if I've got this off, I might as well bring this in. So this has to get mounted like that, but I don't know if I have enough flexibility in the wire to mount it at a shallow angle like that. Pre-charge resistor on there. Once I got this on here, then I'll see where I can actually fold this over and bolt it onto the table. So for those who might have not seen the earlier videos, Kelly says you have to have a pre-charge resistor. So as soon as power comes through, even though the contactor is open, it allows power through to start charging up the capacitors in here. I know I have a pre-charge resistor on the battery as well, but if I forget to use that, I don't want to risk blowing the controller up, and they made it very, very, very clear that if you don't have this, this will die. Is that true? I don't know, but I'm not going to second guess the people who made the device. So you know what might end up working? So if I go that and then come up through, no, that's not going to work. If I come through like that, no, that's not going to work. If I come through like that, and fold over this way, that might work. Oh yeah, and I got the Bluetooth module for the Kelly controllers. Oh, this wire really doesn't want to rotate, but I kind of knew that was the case when I bought it. You know what? Even though I've designed this so that when I finally mount it, this is close to this, I'm thinking for on the bench right now, well, bench on the floor, it might actually be easier if I run it that way. If I mount that like that, this is not going to be symmetrical, which is going to drive me nuts. But then I can come up like this. Oh, this is horrible, but I think it'll work. Okay, let's try that. Okay. You know, if I bring this one down to the second one, that'll just fit on the board. Okay, this is gonna look fugly, but whatever. It'll work. Hopefully, oh, you're just seeing the back of my head. Oh, editing Maddie's gonna be annoyed, but that's okay. Oh, huh? That might work. You know what, hell, I could put just one bolt on it and it's fine. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. There. Good enough for this. Green is V. Hey, Kepler. Back from your busy day of napping all day? Huh? Say hi, YouTube. You like your pets, but you're not for cuddles. So it's hard to make a kitty interlude. But that's okay. We haven't had one in a while. Obviously, if this was going into the boat, I would never leave these wires so close to the positive. The vibration of the boat and beating in the waves would very easily run the risk of rubbing through and creating a dead short. I don't even want to guess what would happen if you dumped one of the phases of AC, I don't even know what the output voltage is, onto the DC bus, or vice versa, whichever way it would flow. I'm sure it would not be good. And if someone suggests, well, why don't you just try drilling these out? I've tried drilling out ring terminals before. It is surprisingly difficult, but also there's not a lot of meat on the outside, so if I drilled the center to fit this, well, you know, maybe it would work. It wouldn't leave a whole lot of contact area between here and here, so I want new ring terminals anyway. Okay, now let's get the ground wire. All right, this one's wired up. Let's at least get the power side of this one done. I was trying to figure out what these are. I bet you that's where they pour in the epoxy or whatever they use to pot this. Not that that really matters at the moment, just suddenly occurred to me. So small on here. Okay, let's just put this on and then I'll see where I can fit it. I'm so glad all of this is dead. The way things are swinging around here, no question, I would have shorted it out by now. Especially being so distracted with the family stuff. All right. Oh, this puts it really close to the ground. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. If I had taken these and set them back further, I would have been fine. Because then I could have brought the wires straight in. Maybe I'll do that before I spin it. But for now, I still want to finish wiring them up because I need the sense of satisfaction that I got something done. And progress has been frustratingly slow. You take whatever wins you can get just to keep the motivation there, you know? I wonder. I've got another idea. I won't be able to get the screw in there, but... could I? You know, if I take this out, I could drop that in there and then come out like that. And that would keep it relatively clear. Let me do that. I'm not so scared of the 5 kilowatt tossing things around. Okay. This is going to work just fine. Yeah, this is going to work just fine. All right, that's locked in. That's not moving. Oh, welcome to the shit show. I don't know if I can get the socket on here anymore. I'm going to do that, and then I'll strap that over like this, and that'll keep the positive wire away from the ground. Okay. It fits. There. Now I just need to get the ground in. Alright. I had hoped to spin the motor, but I also knew that was kind of a long shot, and it's not going to happen, unfortunately. Not on this video. We'll do that on the next video when we're working on the batteries. To do that though, like I said, I need to get the new 6-gauge ring terminals. I'll order those as soon as I stop filming. No, I'll order those when I get back from the airport. Anyways, neither of which is your concern. So I'll get those ring terminals ordered, we'll get those connected, and I will, well, in the next video, we'll get all of this stuff wired up to the STM32 helm, and spin these things. Anyways, I need to go deal with family stuff now, so I'll see you next time on The Digital Mermaid. Bye! Day 2. Absolutely beautiful seas. We're doing about 6 knots. Yesterday was spicier, but gorgeous. Today's a bit more chill. Making good miles. Got about 22 to 24 hours on to get to where we're going. Well, since we departed, I don't know, 8, 9 hours in now. What a day. Absolutely gorgeous day. Great place to sit and chill out.